Welcome to part 2 in my series on Mercedes ABC suspension. This is my own SL500, and you know I've been pondering. If you watch part 1, you're probably still wondering what I'm pondering about. I need to say right off the bat, I'm very pleased with all the comments I've received from that first video. So if you haven't seen it, you need to go back and watch it. I'll put a link in the description below this video. But the comments are really good. Most people complied to the rules. They stated what they own and they stated the problems or the successes they've had with the system. And I want you to know I really appreciate all of you who took the time to do that. Okay, so in part 2, the same requirement applies. You need to have owned one of these cars or own one, and then you can make a comment. If you don't specify that in your comment, you know, I'm just going to use a little button and delete it. I hope you understand why we're looking for facts, we're looking for solutions. Now what I did this morning when I got out the shop is I went ahead and pulled the rest of these plastic panels off to do the complete inspection of the ABC system. And I want to take you around now to each wheel well, show you what's in there, because when you look closely at all 4 of these, you realize you probably only need to remove 2 of them to do a complete inspection on this suspension system. I'll start here with the right side rear wheel well. And if you look closely, there's not much at all related to the ABC suspension inside this wheel well. You have the strut that would need inspecting, which would mean looking for evidence of a torn boot and also looking for any leaks, which are going to end up down here by the bottom of the strut. So even though the liner is in place, you still should be able to look underneath and inspect this strut, because that's really all you need to do on this right rear section. There's not much to see either on this right front fender well. You can see by removing this forward panel, you've got a few things in here, including this auxiliary water pump for your climate control. At least if you're having climate control problems, you might want to make sure this pump is running. So the only thing you really need to inspect here is the strut for leaks and torn boots. You can see that readily. And of course, you may have a hydraulic leak here on this quick disconnect where the line attaches to the strut. So this can all be inspected without having to remove the liner here. I'm at the left rear fender well now, and this is a very important area of inspection right here. There's a lot going on in here. You have 2 accumulators. Maybe some of you are wondering, where are those 4 accumulators anyway? Well, I'm going to get to show you here now in this scene, and in the next scene, you have the one large accumulator right here, and then back in here is another accumulator, and then you have this blocking assembly and all these hoses. Look at all these hoses. So even changing the accumulator is going to be kind of a messy job, and it's going to take a while. So, you know, I've got the accumulators, so now I just have to decide whether I really want to go to all this work to replace them. But fortunately, I'm not seeing any evidence of leaks in the hoses in this area here. And as you saw in part 1, I do have this issue with torn boot on this left rear strut. Now, I noticed walking around the car that I have tags on all 3 of the other struts. They look like they've been replaced, but this one hasn't. So rather than just, you know, pulling this out and changing the boot, I will probably change the entire strut if I opt to go with this repair. Now I'm up front at the left front fender well, and as I had shown you in part 1, I'm really concerned about these hoses here. There's a little leak here which is probably affecting my sensor, but I saw the leak down here at this wedge joint, but I'm also picking up a lot of weeping from this hose. It's actually weeping from the inside out. And this is my big concern right here. That issue right there, because of the age of this car, is a big problem in my mind. And right above these lines here, you can see this is the location of the real small accumulator, which is not difficult to replace in this location. Removing that forward plastic cover under this left front fender exposes this right here, and this is a real key area to inspect. Right back here, you can just see it. This is the location of the other big accumulator right behind all these hoses in this valve block assembly. If you look closely, there's some wetness here and there's some dampness down here in this panel. So this is a concern. It is the concern of age of every one of these hoses. And it looks like, you know, I'm picking up just very minor leaks here. And this is obviously a very fun area to work in. You can see that just by looking at the complexity. And this is another area of concern that I have as I think through how I want to proceed on this SL500. When you do your 100-hour inspection on your ABC suspension, you don't even need to remove the two liners on this right side. Everything is on that left side. You open up those liners over there and get in there and start digging around. You know what you're looking for. And there's something I saw over on that left front side that kind of gives me my biggest concern. It's not that I can't replace the accumulators. You know, it's not that I can't replace the pump or even that strut in the back. It's the hoses. Literally, it's the hoses that worry me. I've been around old Mercedes for over 30 years, and there's something about 18 years. I don't know what it is. I've kind of proven this many times with these old cars. 15 years old, you're okay. 20 years old, well, things start to deteriorate at a rate that makes it difficult to keep the car maintained to be a reliable daily driver. This car is 20 years old. And you saw the hoses starting to show signs of weeping, particularly one. Now, when they weep like that, that means they're leaking from the inside out, which means they're rotting from the inside. You get this a lot with brake hoses. Well, you get it with these hydraulic hoses when they get that old. They start shedding inside. Think of where all that stuff's going. So even though I replace all those parts that were sitting on my bench plus more, am I really going to be able to fix this system so it will be reliable? Now let's go back to part one. I made the statement, you know, I've only driven this car 8,000 miles in 6 years, and I asked you if you thought about why. I think some of you can probably answer that question now, okay? So I have a decision to make. Back to pondering. I'll probably make the decision in the next couple days based on what I've seen here during this inspection. Now I have three options. If it weren't age, maybe I'd have more options. But think about me. You know, 20 years ago, there's a lot of things I could do, and I could inspect myself, you know, out of any kind of a problem. But as I age, and anybody else ages, sooner or later, inspections aren't enough. So I have three options that I got to contemplate.